Today you will learn what Jackie Chan can teach us about WoW PvP and how a few mental tricks could save you from getting absolutely tilted the next time you queue. But first we need to watch Waz have a really bad time. In this clip he's going to try to land a single cyclone, and we're going to count how many times he gets stopped. It's going to start with a deep breath, and then he's going to find himself in trouble, which means needing to shift into bear form. Now he's free to go for a cast, but again it gets stopped. No worries though, because he waits out the interrupt and just gets kicked again. Then the monk will trade out his revival just to stop the next one. Now that all kicks are down, he tries once more, only to get knocked one more time. If you've played any arena recently, this exact same experience has probably happened to you. All you want to do is play the game, but you're getting stopped over and over. But do you notice something? Even after getting his cyclone stopped for the 6th time in a row, Waz has not snapped his keyboard in half. In fact, moments after landing his first cyclone, he nearly wins the game within 10 seconds. So how could someone go from getting harassed for 30 seconds straight to nearly winning a game all by himself? I wanted to make a video all about mentality in PvP because, let's be honest, WoW is super tilting. But what I've always found fascinating about some of the best players of all time is how calm they can be in the most stressful situations possible. And I'm not saying that every rank 1 player is cool as a cucumber, but what I am saying is there are a few mental tricks you can use to prevent yourself from being tilted and just have a better time queuing arena in general. And I was actually inspired to make this video after seeing a post on Reddit about a new add-on. Before any of you start writing paragraphs about why add-ons are ruining the game, just hear me out for a second. This new add-on called Silent CR is pretty simple. All it does is give you some options to hide your arena rating on your queue window and even on the score screen that pops up at the end of every game, which might make losing less tilting. And if you're wondering why this might be helpful, it's because it could be a potential solution to queue anxiety, which is the fear of playing poorly under pressure, or simply the fear of losing rating. If you've ever wondered why some players have multiple ults of the same class, it's because it also helps with queue anxiety. By having 2 characters you can play, that means you can leapfrog, which involves queuing the lowest rated character first, and then swapping around once you've passed your ults. Another way players have dealt with queue anxiety over the years is to hide player names across their entire UI. By keeping names hidden, you don't know if you're playing against Peekaboo or your average Elwyn Forest Edater, and by removing the identity of the enemy player, you can process the game more objectively instead of being distracted by someone's name. So I think for some players, removing unnecessary information from your screen, whether it's your CR, your MMR, or player names, could have a positive effect on your mindset. And I'm not saying you have to go full minimalist mode unless that's your thing, but having a balance of the right information could limit potential distractions and allow you to play with much more confidence. And speaking of distractions, if you want to deal maximum damage or increase your healing, you need to pay close attention to these small maintenance buffs and debuffs, as well as any important procs, which Blizzard unfortunately doesn't make easy to track these days since their philosophy is to clutter your screen with all of this irrelevant information. That's why we decided to say F Blizzard, and we created our own UI that presents the most relevant information in the clearest way possible. Just look at a side-by-side comparison of Blizzard's nameplates with our own Better BlizzPlates profile. And if you're learning a new class or spec, our weak auras make it much easier to keep track of procs and even missing buffs. In case you didn't know, we offer a rank up guarantee with our subscription, which promises you will gain rating or you get your money back. And this single sub covers all of our games under one roof, with thousands of guides being available instantly. Just be sure to click the discount link below if you want to get started. But by now you might be wondering what any of this has to do with Jackie Chan. Well, if you've ever watched any of his old movies, you might have noticed a similar theme. Jackie Chan rarely punches first. In fact, what often makes him the hero is the fact he's willing to get beat up a few times before kicking his opponent's ass. So let's go back to the clip we saw in the beginning of this video with Waz being stopped on his cyclone for 30 seconds straight. This is a universal experience for anyone playing a caster in 2025. And trust me, all you melee out there, I know you also don't have it easy, whether it's getting kited endlessly by some stupid looking lizard flying across the arena, or even worse, a mage. Are those moments where you just want to press your CDs, but you just get disarmed, stunned, knocked, and gripped all within 0.1 second? This is all thanks to weak aura making some air horn sound in someone's earphones thousands of miles away. These moments where you just want to play the game, but you can't even use a single ability are super tilting. And what can make things even worse is sometimes when you actually can play the game, your opponents sometimes press some magical outplay ability almost accidentally. Nope. I'm talking about these demon hunters who will just glimpse your stun for no reason in the middle of the game, or these priests that will fade your CC almost randomly. And whenever this happens to me, I just think to myself that these players must be God's gift to WoW, or they're just insanely lucky. But let's go back to Waz. For the first time in 30 seconds, he has finally managed to land a single cast. And then immediately after, he presses Incarnation, chucks a few star surges, and suddenly he's in a position to win the game. Just like Jackie Chan, he was willing to get punched in the face for 30 seconds straight, only to punch back with 10 times the force. So I think it's important for players to sometimes adopt a Jackie Chan strategy in their gameplay, which involves doing a few things. Number one, I think you should assume that your opponents will always try to outplay you. For instance, a player like Bigmex knows that any priest he's playing against at high MMR is probably going to try to fade, death, and meld the moment he harpoons into trap. This might not be super relevant to people at lower ratings, but if you're like at least 1800 rated or above, you should really start playing with the mindset that everyone around you is filming a PvP montage looking for the perfect clip. And this leads to the second part of our Jackie Chan strategy, which is to just be patient. Now this part is a little bit tricky because we need to be playing the game fast enough to keep up with momentum, but sometimes it's good to try to delay your go a few seconds just to make sure there are no interruptions. For instance, as a melee, this could mean waiting for your gap closers to be ready in order to reconnect if you get knocked or rooted. And as a caster, this could mean intentionally baiting out a kick early before your setup, getting an extra interruption out of the way before you do your real go. If you can afford to delay a go just by a few seconds in order to make it nearly perfect, that's a trade that is almost always worth taking. And at the very least, knowing that your opponent is trying to outplay you can help you navigate a sort of mental battle, and even if you do get outplayed, it's just a sign to go back to the drawing board and think about ways to avoid it in the future. And if there's just one tool that you can use to help with being patient and avoiding outplays, it's definitely Omnibar, which I would argue is the most powerful add-on in PvP. If you play caster, you should get in the habit of checking any CC avoidance tools like grounding, death, spell reflection, you name it. And no matter what, it doesn't matter what class you play, you should always check to see what defensives the enemy team has available. That way you can avoid those moments where you kind of get outplayed with, where people pre-use a defensive and whatnot. There's a reason why the skill capped UI splits up Omnibar into different categories, because by doing so, it makes it easier to spot any potential outplays. And finally, I think there's an additional step everyone should take before the gates even open, which is to map out key moments of the game in your head during the starting room. Without getting too philosophical here, it's useful to think of our brains as being both fast and slow, which is actually the core concept of this book if you're ever interested in reading it. Anyway, the TLDR is that our brain has two systems. System 1 is good at performing fast, automatic tasks, like stepping on the brakes whenever you see a red light at a traffic stop. The other system is slower and more deliberate, better suited for tasks that require more time or calculations, like, for instance, calculating a tip at a restaurant, which I guess doesn't make any sense to our non-American viewers, but anyway. In PvP, the fast system would be your damage or healing rotation, because ideally, it's happening automatically without you even thinking about it. Problem is that when it comes to Arena, we're often required to make slow, complicated decisions in a very short window. In other words, a task that would otherwise be best for our slow system suddenly needs to be done instantly. For instance, sometimes you need to see that your healer is in CC and the enemy team is popping CDs, which means you need to figure out what defensive best works in that particular moment. And that's kind of a lot to think about, and you need to make a decision very fast. As players, we also need to know the difference between spell casts. We need to know which spells are actually worth kicking and win, and which spells we can actually ignore. I think somewhere a lot of players mess up is they let their fast brain take the wheel in some of these situations, which results in making the wrong decisions automatically. Sometimes players just want to play fast when it's good to kind of slow the game down. And what has personally helped me bridge this gap is creating a sort of script for the game while I'm in the starting room. In other words, I pre-plan some of the slow decisions I will be making in order to speed them up later on. Instead of being caught off guard by the opener, I plan exactly what cooldown I want to trade as a healer, depending on whether I get CC'd or whether the enemy team pops offensive, you name it. I try to pre-plan all these decisions first so that when they actually happen in Arena, I'm not caught off guard. Some of you, this might sound a bit obvious, but I think creating a structure to your games before they even start will allow you to make these decisions much faster and much more deliberate, and yeah, you can pay attention to other things that matter. If you've ever recorded your own gameplay, you might have noticed these fast brain, slow brain mistakes. In the heat of battle, it's really hard to make these high-level decisions, especially if your mental bandwidth is being taken up by your rotation. Remember, rotations are better designed for System 1. They should be automatic and fast. This is why we've always suggested that players try to make their rotation as autopilot as possible. The more mental bandwidth you can free up, the faster you can make the more complicated plays in Arena. And if you want to autopilot your rotation, we make this easy with our detailed damage guides that teach you how to sequence your abilities just like a rank 1 player, split up into a series of videos unique to every hero spec. We also have dedicated class guides that help teach you openers in Arena, which I find especially useful for healers. If you aren't playing the opener close to perfect as a healer, you're probably losing a lot more than you should. We're currently rolling out updates for all of our class courses in Season 3, and as always, everything is backed up by a rating gain guarantee. So if you want to hit your rating goals and avoid tilting this season, be sure to use the exclusive discount link below. For now, I want to thank you all for watching. See you soon.